Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. In this video, we're going to talk about the entrepreneur's pivot. Before we do so, we should have a little sip of coffee. This is one of my rare car vlogs. I think that when I get my new camera, I'm going to do a lot more car vlogs and vlogs on the road because people like them. But anyway, let's just get into it. I'm recording this on my cell phone. So the entrepreneur's pivot is essentially the ability for the entrepreneur to pivot the direction of the business, the product that they're going to use based on what the market is telling them. One of the grand illusions, one of the big illusions out there in the world of non-entrepreneurs looking to become entrepreneurs is that you're going to come up with this amazing business idea. There's amazing product, there's amazing service, there's amazing SaaS, software as a service, whatever. And you're just going to launch it and then you're going to be a super success. That is not the way it goes 99% of the time. The way it typically goes is you come up with this amazing idea, but it's not really too good. So you come up with this idea and you launch and you start hitting all kinds of problems, all kinds of roadblocks. Now, people who end up going to work for somebody else will give up at that point. They'll say, forget it, business is too hard. And business can be hard, but if you use the right strategies, you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls and actually find success. But anyway, so the illusion is that you go out there, you launch a product, it's going to be amazing. It doesn't work that way. You actually go out there, it doesn't work too well. You hit all kinds of roadblocks, and you see that this doesn't work, or they didn't like this aspect of the product, or maybe the whole business model doesn't work. That also happens too. So the pivot is literally pivoting from one direction to the next, turning based on what market forces tell you. And this is like a skill rather, the ability to pivot and to identify the need to pivot early on. This is part of the skill set of a good entrepreneur. If I was to identify the number one trait of an entrepreneur, I would have to say it's persistence, the ability to keep pushing through, keep trying, keep working, and if necessary, keep pivoting. I have seen people pivot several times within a business to finally make it work. So they thought they were going to sell this, and they said, it's not quite working, we're going to sell that, then we're going to sell this, we're going to sell that, we're going to sell this, we're going to sell that. And finally they found what they were going to do. Pivoting and go beyond just the product that you might sell. It might be based on the way that you sell your product that might be a part of the pivot. So I'll give you a quick story. So there's this company, I forget its name of course now, that sold GPSs. So they try to sell it in retail stores, into Best Buys and stuff, but they didn't do too well. Nobody was buying these GPSs. I guess people had phones or something. So they couldn't make any money. So what did they do? They pivoted. They didn't change their product. They changed where they sold their product. That was their innovation. That was their smart move. They started selling their product, their GPS, to fleets of cars, like car rental companies and stuff, if I recall. So they went into fleet sales rather than retail sales, and that made all the difference, and the company was success. There's the example of the pivot. I'll give you an example of one of my early pivots, way back when the web was young. So we're looking at 1999, something like that. I forget the exact year, but anyway. So I had my online dating site, and it was starting to grow, starting to get more and more members. But I wanted to speed up its growth. So at this point, it was 2000. And the dot-com bubble just crashed. And you had all these domain names in shambles, where these companies had spent huge amounts of money promoting these domains. And they were just in shambles. So I figured, maybe I could pick up one of these domains for a song and a dance for a cheap price since they went bankrupt. So what happened, I started looking around the web trying to find these domains. I couldn't find anything at that point in time. I don't even know if Google was out at that point or if it was widely known. So search wasn't very good in 2000. And so I had this book, Creating Killer Websites, which I had bought in '96, and it profiled a whole bunch of startup sites as examples of good-looking websites. And I said, hey, there's a lot of startup sites in there. So I started flipping through all those sites in the book and looking up the URLs, looking up the domains, see whether or not they might be available for sale. And unfortunately, they were all either offline, I couldn't get a hold of anybody, or they weren't for sale. So I was like, But here's the thing. On the cover of that book, there was this giant website address for the book called killersites.com. I said, So I went to killersites.com, and that site was offline. I said, ooh. So I was able to track down the owner, the author of the book. Very popular. It was one of the best-selling books of web design of all time. It was referenced in Apple.com. It was referenced on Microsoft. It was in so many other places, published, I think, in like 12, 15 languages, something like that. So very, very popular book, big hit. And on the spine of the book was its domain name, killersites.com. So I reached the owner, and I was able to buy that website and domain name. So that was a good deal for me. And why did I buy it? Because I figured there was going to be a good amount of traffic going to that site. And what I thought I would do is I would use that site, that killersites.com, to promote my online dating site. Now, when I look back, I go, ooh, that's a silly idea. But you got to understand, web and search and our understanding of traffic flows was not very sophisticated then compared to today. But I was able to identify that particular URL was going to have a lot of traffic no matter what. So anyway, I was thinking about what am I going to do with this domain. It was all about web design and development and coding and so forth. It was one of the very first sites in the world that taught this stuff. And I wanted to use it to promote my online dating site. So I was talking to a friend of mine who was an early SEO expert, and he said to me, don't do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, don't promote your dating site on killersites.com because you're going to kill the value of the domain name. People go to that site to learn about web design, not to get an online date. So I said, oh, that guy makes sense. So what did I do? I said, okay, fine. So I pivoted. I said, I got this valuable domain name now, and all about teaching code and web design. So I said, let's see if, I'm a software developer. I know this stuff really well. So I started writing articles on coding instead, rather than using it to promote my online dating site. And so that was a pivot in the sense where I went from online dating to starting to teach code through articles. And eventually that built. It had a certain amount of traffic, like a base to begin with, but I started building it up. And in 2002, I released my very first video course on coding, and it was called Web Design 1. And in those days, there was practically nobody doing video tutorials. I was one of the very first out there, period, teaching video, period, let alone teaching people how to code HTML and CSS. And so Web Design 1 went out, and it was a success. I was like, wow. So I then realized that there was the business for me. The online dating thing, I talked about that in other vlogs. I decided to shut that down because I got invaded by all these people into group frolicking. What's it called again? Swinging. It became like a swingers domain for some reason. And it was not my intention. And so I decided to shut that down because I didn't want to be the nerd who built the big swinger site. In retrospect, maybe I should have kept it going. But anyway. So I pivoted it into tech education, code education. And it kind of makes sense because my father was a teacher, many of my aunts and uncles, many of my cousins are teachers. So I come from a family of teachers, so kind of strange circumstances found me, into teaching as my business, if you will. I was the very first pivot into teaching, and it was not intentional, but that's how sometimes things happen. And there you go. So it was a pivot based on information brought to me. It was a pivot based on where there was activity, meaning I had this site that had traffic. So I said, we're going to pivot into that business. It aligned well with my natural talents. I'll leave you with this. One of the things I tell people is when you're getting into any field, whether it be coding or martial arts or business or whatever, you got to try to find that niche that works with your skill sets and your natural abilities. The key to being successful is to figure out where you are good and then to develop those skills. Do not try to jump into a game or into an area where you're no good, where you're naturally not capable. Very obvious example I like to use: if you're 5'2", do not aspire to be an NBA basketball player. It's just never going to work out for you. On the other hand, if you're 6'5", don't aspire to be a gymnast. It's not going to work out for you. Same thing in the context of web development and coding. There are very many languages out there and many different types of software development, many different types of coding, and you have to figure out where your strength lies. And once you find out, whether you're UX, UI, whether you're algorithms, whether you're a system architect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, once you figure out where your strengths lie, then you can shine and you can develop those strengths and grow and do very well. All right, that's the entrepreneur's pivot, learning to move and change based on information that comes to you, based on the reality on the ground. It's a skill. You got to develop it. You got to embrace it. All right, bye-bye.